Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Let's go!
The barbell hasn't changed in over 100 years. I can take a 25-pound plate and we'll go out on the turf and I'll have you hating life. We talk about straining your gut, pushing past that comfort level. I want a lot of energy. What better breeding ground is there for being a success in life than the weight room?
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 321. I want to thank you guys for listening each week. Truly appreciate those of you that like, share, comment. Just helps us continue to highlight the great people we have in our profession. Also want to thank our sponsor, Train Heroic, for bringing this episode to you for free. Only partner with companies that I believe in both the people and the product, and they are excellent on both fronts. This week, I'm joined by a good buddy, a guy that's been very instrumental to this podcast and helping me get this started, and a bad friend by me by not having him on earlier than this. But Anthony Renna is the founder and host of Strength Coach Podcast, Strength Coach TV, and a new book, author of a new book, Be Like the Best, that's coming out here pretty soon. So, man, just really appreciate you coming on the show. And again, bad friend by me by not having you on sooner.
Yeah, man, episode 321. I was forgiving you before, but now I'm like, wow, 321. Jeez. Devon, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on. Like I said, give yourself a break. You have invited me. I just waited. I knew this book was coming out, and it's taken me a couple of years to do. So I wanted to wait until I had the right time and come on your show.
No, awesome, man. Well, Anthony, I know, we talked a little bit off camera about this, with all the different projects that you've had, there's been, there's been partnerships and different things like this. And you are quite an accomplished coach in and of yourself. You're quite an accomplished businessman in and of yourself. Going a little bit of your background. I mean, I know you went through the bar business, you went into Equinox, started your own 5-iron fitness, I believe it was called, right?
Yeah.
Which one of those stops kind of along the way kind of best prepared you for your current, like what you're currently doing?
Probably the bar business, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think, it's one thing that we found out in the book too is, and you and I were talking about tribes a couple minutes ago. It's so important that those relationships that you build, and in the bar business really did help me kind of feel comfortable having to talk to people all the time, different types of people, different levels of intoxication. But it was able for me to also say, when I was going into fitness, say, I think this would be a good fit for me because of my background, because I'm a little more outgoing, because I can talk to people, because I have some different experiences. So that really helped. And same thing, like transitioning into the fitness business was an easy transition. I killed it at Equinox and was able to, have a tribe and, be able to start 5-iron fitness. And like you said, a lot of people didn't know I did a lot of these things because people know me for the Strength Coach Podcast, and I really tried to keep my opinion out of these things, out of something like the Strength Coach Podcast, because it's for the most part, I want the listener to hear what that person has to say. Let them say, you know what, I love Ron McKeefery. I gotta go buy CEO Strength Coach or Weight Room Wisdom. Like, I want to go and investigate more, or let them say, I don't like what he's saying. I don't care. I'm not going to try and argue with you on the show. I'm not going to try and say, hey, Ron, well, that's not how I do it around here. The point was just, hey, let me get this information to strength and conditioning and fitness professionals. So that's why a lot of people didn't really know that I did. And, that's what part of what I'm trying to do now is break out a little bit into just being the guy behind the guy, Mike Boyle.
Yeah, but you're far from that for sure. But, I think people don't realize, I think it's a little bit even of my own story with our, Iron Game Chalk Talk. I mean, I was a, accomplished strength coach. I'd been strength coach of the year even before I started this and things like that. But there is something to be said for enhancing your authority by being a connector, right? And whether or not it's being connected to Mike Boyle or connecting with all these guests that you have on, what people fail to realize is not only are you building other people's brands, but you're building your own personal brand, and you're building your network and your IQ, basically you're absorbing all that information at the same time, which is being able to be directly applied to 5 Iron Fitness or University of Tennessee or whatever it may be. So I think people that are listening to this that are maybe entrepreneurial minded, that connector role, it can be very, very fruitful if you go down that path.
Absolutely. And, like we've talked about this in other podcasts with you being on my show, is that, it's when you just kind of keep serving people. And that's my mission. My mission is to help fitness professionals become successful and make an impact in the world. So I'm able to make those everyday decisions based on that mission. And the more I just do that, right, I'm serving people. And when something like Be Like the Best comes up and I have this book and I want to promote it, people are more than happy because I've helped those people. And that's not why I did it. I did it to get the word out there to help strength and conditioning professionals. But everybody that I've had on my show is now like, hey, whatever you need, let me know. Let me know. When I called those 50 people, you were one of the first 5 people. So you were on that before I had a book. I didn't even know I was going to do a book. But when I called you to say, hey, would you be part of this success series? And Mike Boyle and Alan Cosgrove and Don Saladino and Gerald Cooper Smith, they were like, of course. And then the 45 more people that I got on, they didn't bat an eye. So because of the things that I've done for them in the past as well, and because they're great people and they have that mission as well.
100%. Well, man, you don't have the kind of success that you've had in your career without making some mistakes along the way. What's one of the biggest and how you've learned from it?
I think if I did that podcast for a while called Stop and Give Me 20. And one of the things was, what's that? What would you tell your younger self? And I think 2 things really stand out that kind of like really even writing the book or doing these interviews for the book that really reminded me. One is you have to be intentional about stuff. So I was drifting, right? I was like in the bar business, same thing. And even in the fitness business, like I just was like, hey, I'm doing well at Equinox. And I want to open my own facility, but I still didn't have a specific plan or mission. And once you have that mission, now those kind of the values, you can figure out your values a little bit easier. Your goals are now related to all of those things, right? If you say you want to help strength and conditioning professionals become successful and make an impact in the world, now my goals are related to that. Okay, this book is going to help them do that. A coaching program is going to help them do that. Things that I do with Strength Coach podcast and strengthcoach.com and Body Bible Online, those are going to help people learn and become more successful. So that was one thing. Like I didn't write those things down. It wasn't intentional about my mission, my purpose, my goals, right? You have to be intentional. And number 2 is really like I guess it would also be a regret. You got to think bigger. I just did not think big enough. And I can tell you one site that I did was called Strength and Conditioning Webinars. In when GoToWebinar first came out, Zoom didn't even exist. And I said, oh my God, I have a good idea. I can leverage all these people I've had on my show, and we could do webinars, and we'll do 2 to 3 a month, and we'll charge a monthly fee, and we're going to get CEUs, and it's going to help people. Great. But I really didn't think big enough with that. And it did well. I made my money back in 1 month.
Right.
And I made a nice little revenue for a couple of years, and I stopped that when I became a partner in strengthcoach.com. I kind of merged it. But I wish I thought bigger. It could have been much bigger, and it could still be going today on a different level. So that's one thing that I might, got to think bigger, guys. We can't just sit here in our little spot and be like, yeah, this is great. You don't want to increase revenue 2%. You want to increase revenue 10%. You got to start pushing those boundaries. And you won't be that way unless you're intentional about it.
That's right. Well, it doesn't start without first having the thought, right? That never happens. And, I just heard, I can't remember, one of the the guy's got 50 billion. He's one of the top five richest people in the world. He's like, look, that's the deal. Like if you say you're going to make 10 million, you're going to make 10 million. That's going to be the ceiling, and if you say you're going to make 50 billion, well, then that's where you start to, it starts first with having the thought and then putting in the work, obviously. And, I think it goes back to, my own story with strength and conditioning. Like, my goal from the very beginning was to be an NFL strength coach. And so when I was offered a AAA job making, pretty good money as a young strength coach versus a unpaid internship with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I took the unpaid internship because it was clear that was my goal and this wasn't, and I think to your point, when you're intentional, it makes the path a little bit easier to go down, or not easier to go down, but to see, through the woods, right?
Yep.
I think you and I are very similar. We talk all the time about this, but you have a mission of education, like a platform of education really has been what you built your business off of. Why is education so important? Especially a guy that maybe, again, I can see a young Anthony Renna behind the bar that doesn't give a crap about anything, flinging bottles and stuff.
Yeah.
Why does education become the mission for you?
Yeah, it's funny because I can trace it back to even in college. I was thinking about being a teacher, right? I love talking to people about, educating people about stuff. I love to teach somebody, even whatever it may be, right? And then when I got in the bar business, I look back and I realized, wow, they used to send. I worked in New York City and I worked for the Gerber Group, Randy Gerber, and he had a bunch of bars in the W hotels. And what happened was they would send the new managers to my bar for 2 weeks to trail me. And some other managers were like, oh, man, that sucker, I was like, I love this. I love when they come. I love teaching them about what I was doing and how I was successful in that role. And when I got into fitness, I felt like, okay, I'm helping people. I'm teaching people still. And then the Strength Coach podcast and Strength Coach TV just really like 10x that, right? Because now you're reaching people throughout the world and throughout people in, it's not just in your, in your town. And so for me, that was just something that I saw, that I felt like, that I knew, like, especially when Nick Winkle, when I saw him speak at Perform Better one year, and he said, you have to understand what is your it. You better think about that. And that's what I meant about being intentional. And I had done that. I've done those exercises, but that really kind of hit home, and I realized, the it is helping all of these people through the Strength Coach podcast, through strengthcoach.com and Strength Coach TV. I loved when people came up and be like, oh my God, I watched all the Strength Coach TVs before I opened my gym. Thank you so much for doing that. That just made me feel so good. And I understood, for me, I'm just somebody who, I'm a lifelong learner. I was a bicycle messenger when I was younger. When I was 21, I lived in LA. And I hadn't gone to college that year. So it was my first kind of out of school role. I was like, you know what? I don't need college, right? I'd gone 3 years. And I was in LA being a bicycle messenger. And I kind of got depressed at one point. I was like, I'm not learning anything. And I started reading all the books you're supposed to read in high school, like all the classics, like all the F. Scott Fitzgerald, and reading like The Great Gatsby and all of these books that you're like, Of Mice and Men, and like whatever you were supposed to read in high school.
Sure.
And I'd be on elevators as a bicycle messenger, like reading these books, like loving them, right? So for me, it just was something that I always felt like was important. And even when I first got into fitness, I mean, when I was in Equinox, you did not see me without functional training for sports or core performance or athletic body and balance. All of the, Bill Ferrand's books, that sports performance book he put with all the different guys coming in it. So for me, it just was something that was always really important, that I always wanted to learn myself. So,
yeah, I think the beauty about education, right, is, first you have to start as a lifelong learner to want to be able to educate, right? Because it forces you to always stay ahead of the curve a little bit. And it's something that it has stood the test of time, right? I mean, everybody always wants to learn more, and they're willing to pay for that because it usually means advancement of some sort. So I think a lot of, I think in our industry, a lot of people's backup plan is, especially for straight and conditioning, is I'm going to just go open the gym. Well, if you haven't taken the time to learn the gym business, you're going to fail miserably, right?
Yeah.
Or, you have to figure out that you're going to have to learn how to understand accounting and all these other elements that you didn't go to school for. So I agree with you, man. I think to be a great coach, we've talked about this on, even about weight room wisdom. I mean, to be a great coach, you have to be a great teacher. And to be a great teacher, you got to be a great storyteller. And so that all kind of works together. So I'm
Ron,
with you.
what's interesting too is when you go back to that, in my book, we don't even talk like all of the action steps and challenges and et cetera, the takeaways are really about mission and purpose and goal setting and relationships and personal development. Nothing about, hey, okay, this one's about periodization, right? Which is great. I'm not saying don't learn that, but I think that's why you need to value education, because it needs to be this broad spectrum. And if you read Range, right, by David Epstein, they talk about that as well. We need to be well-rounded. You just said it with accounting and marketing, and that's why you want to farm some of that stuff out. But you need to know. You also need to know it yourself. So
right, or you'll get taken advantage of. You'll charge. You'll pay twice the money. Well, let's talk a little bit about be like the best. I mean, I think what an awesome concept for a book. What a great message across the board. Let's take us back to the where you had the idea and why.
Yeah. So when I sold the gym, to focus on this educational platform at continuefit.com was where I have it. I was putting everything there. I had Strength Coach Podcast, strengthcoach.com, Stop and Give Me 20. I did a podcast for a while about books. So I was like, I got to put it on one place instead of saying like this, this website, that website, this website. Wanted to go to one, and I came up with Continue as the name of the company for Continue Your Education. And it's at continuefit.com. So what I knew I needed was a lead magnet. And that lead magnet, basically, if anybody doesn't know, is just what am I going to give you in exchange for your email? And so I thought, okay, what do people know me for? They know me for interviewing, right? Great. So I didn't want to interview just about strength and conditioning, because I do that on the show every day, twice a month. So I said, okay, what's my mission? And again, going back to being intentional, I knew, look, it answers a lot of questions. It answered the question for me. Wait, your mission is to help fitness professionals become successful, make an impact in the world. How do I do that? So I'm going to get interviews with 5 people that I know that are in this business, but have different kind of niches and roles. Mike Boyle in the sports performance private sector industry, right? He's one of the leaders. Geraldine Cooper-Smith, who is trained all of these personal trainers for so long through Equinox and Nike. Don Saladino, who has one of the best personal brands in the world. Alan Cosgrove, who is teaching the business of fitness. And Ron McKeefery, who has educated so many strength and conditioning professionals in the college and pro ranks, right? So all similar, but different kind of level. So I said, let me interview them on success. Let's find out what it takes. So I did that. And that was an audio interview. And I said, this would be a good PDF, because like, let me give a bonus. And then I thought, wow, this should be a great book. And Ron, what happens, right? Stephen Pressfield, who wrote Do the Work, calls it the resistance, right? Yeah. You're not an author. Nobody wants to hear from you. You don't really have much to say. Like, like Tim Ferriss already kind of did a similar book. And then, so you have to overcome that resistance. I said, you know what? No, I'm going to get 45 more people who are accessible, like the 5 that I picked originally, like good, accessible people. And again, I said this on another podcast, like nothing against Tim Ferriss. I love Tim Ferriss. He's great. He's done amazing things, but he's also talking to Richard Branson at the White House sipping tea. Right. I'm like, no, we're not, he's not accessible to me, right? Yeah. So I wanted to talk to people that were more accessible and talk to them about their journey. And I said, let me call 45 more people. And I said, hey, I got a book coming out, which another thing, I didn't have a book coming out. If anything, I was going to self-publish it, right? So I did, and everybody agreed, and we did the interviews, and I got them transcribed. So that's how it came about. Was I thought, this would be a great way to educate people, to let me get all these people to talk about success in a different way besides, hey, make sure you're on the floor, make sure you're going up and, kissing babies and shaking hands to your, to all the people in the gym. How do we teach them about how Ron really got successful besides the being such a great coach?
Well, yeah, no, fantastic. And people don't, obviously that sounds like you do 45, interviews and it's a book, right? And it's so much more than that. And it takes so much time, especially to turn around and make that into a cohesive, uh, book product, that flows from chapter to chapter. And then obviously all the additional things that you've thrown in to kind of build off of that, and exercises and things along those lines.
Yeah.
When you reached out to those 50 people, there's some amazing people on that list. What were the things that stood out? Like to be like the best, don't give all of them, but what are maybe 3 of the things that stood out that people need to know?
Yeah, I think going back to what we talked to before, and what I did, and like what you just mentioned, it like after each interview, I did a be like. So be like Ron, right? Be like Mike. And that is a takeaway that I got. And there's many takeaways in these interviews, but I wanted to give people a starter, right? And you did it in Weight Room Wisdom. You did your coach's huddle and your athlete's huddle. And not enough books do that. Like, people want a little bit of a push. Like, give me, like in Weight Room Wisdom, you gave them a question to ask the athletes, right? And that's what we want. We want a little bit of a push, because then I'll be like, ooh, I got another question I can come up with, right? Just give me a head start. And that's what I wanted to do after each interview was, that's what made my book different was, hey, here's a challenge or action step that, a takeaway that I got from Ron's interview, right? So what I really got was going back to being intentional. So, you have to find your mission and your purpose, right? That was a big thing. Like, everybody had that. Everybody had this clear direction of what they want to do, how they want to impact people, what's the legacy that they want to leave. I'm telling you, everybody kind of had that. Even if they didn't specifically write it down, they had it in their head. And that was one thing that really stood out. And again, they were intentional about it for the most part. And that's what led to their plan and their goals, right? That was a huge thing. And I think they understood the importance of what the impact that they're having. That's a thing too, Ron, that I think we got to remind people is, anybody that's listening, if you're listening to this, I know you are out there making a great impact. You just don't even know the impact you're making, because when you train somebody, I don't care if it's in just like you think, well, I'm training, junior varsity football player. Yeah, but you're giving him skills for life that is going to transcend into other areas of his life, that he might become a better student, or she might become a better worker, etc. Right? And then even, moving forward, they might help their family or their younger brother or sister, or so there's such a ripple effect that we have, and you have to stop and pat yourself on the back once in a while, because that's what keeps us going. So that was another thing, is like they understand that importance. The value of relationships, they really understood. You and I talked about this. I can't stress that enough. We have to keep, and we have a lot of challenges in the book based on that. And then they take action. They move forward. They really work their butts off, and they go after it with, like you said, a tenacity that is unique. That's a direct quote from the book. So those were things that I really were reiterated. There is no 4-hour work week, right? It's like you talked about it, and this is part of the problem with our industry, is that we work so much, and you could get caught in this, hey, I'm making a pretty good salary, I can stay here and relax. No, you have to be thinking of your next move. If you're not intentional about it, you won't know what your next move is. So those were things that, and they're all related. That's what was really interesting, was these things were all related to each other.
Well, it's. I mean, you hear it all the time, right? Success. The equations of success. It's the same. It's just you got to put in the work to do it, right? And so you got to see what that. You got to see what that algorithm is, and you got to, and what those elements are of having a mission and purpose of something that you're motivated by, and being intentional with your plans and goals, and the value of relationships. And once you know those things, then it's just a matter of putting in the work. And I think the thing that people don't realize is, on every single page of that book is going to be somebody that's walked down the path that you're walking, their way, their tactical way that they went about determining their own personal goals and process, or the determining what that purpose was for their life. And when you
Yeah.
see that, that's why I love reading biographies. That's why I love these types of books, is because you're sidestepping all of the minefields, and you're just kind of, it starts to clear up for you. And then you just have to ask yourself the hard questions, right? And you have to hold yourself extremely accountable.
Yeah, it really is true. And I'll take that into kind of a little bit of a different direction with keeping that in mind, is that you see all these people that, have kind of, and that's why I wanted to do 50 people, right? Was because just because of the way Ron did it. Ron's Ron. You can take stuff from him, and but you have to modify. Be like, you know what? I took this from Ron, and I took a little bit of this from Mike, and I got to try it. It's like you got to work with it. You got to play with it. And I think that turn it around to the listener, everybody, is, I heard a great quote from a guy named Ray Edwards, and it's why you should have a product or have a podcast or have your YouTube show, or get your name out, get yourself out there and start talking about what you're doing, because there's somebody out there that can only hear your voice. So if you say, I'm not going to do a podcast because McKeefery's got one, Strength Coach Podcast is out there, Brett Bartholomew's doing it, blah, blah, blah. You know what? There's people that can't listen to my voice or your voice, or they don't like what you're doing or I'm doing, and that's okay. Everybody, there's somebody out there that can only hear your voice. And if you remember that, you'll start to take action on some of the things, just because, like I said, we have a podcast or we wrote a book. Everybody should be doing these type of things, especially in the strength and conditioning world, because eventually you're going to get fired, because it's the nature of the business. It's nothing personal. A new team comes in, new coach, new general manager, and you're fired, right? So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it goes back to that typical entrepreneurial kind of euphemism where it's, even if you're just talking to 50 people a week, on your podcast, think about filling up a movie theater with 50 people and talking to them once a week. And that changes the way that you look at that, right? 50 people to your audience may not seem like very many, but if you threw 50 people in a movie theater, it'd be like, holy crap, I'm going to get nervous talking to these guys,
Yes.
So I agree with you. Everybody's got a book in them. Everybody's got a podcast in them. You got to find what your medium is to be able to spread your message.
Agreed.
It may be a blog, it may be a podcast, it may be a book, it may be speaking, it may be whatever you choose to do. But I'm a firm believer in that. Out of the 50 people, they're all 50 great people. But give me one that maybe this audience isn't familiar with, and maybe a little piece of that story or that message.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody, like, I didn't want to come up with a Boyle or I think when you look at somebody, and I'm going to go back to this intentional thing, like Krista Duran. Krista is a trainer out of Hamden, Connecticut. She has a facility called Tough Girl Fitness. And Krista is trying to empower women to see in themselves what they can't see right now, right? So Krista is building them up all the time, women. She has 500 members at this gym in Hamden, Connecticut. And her message is so incredible. And, in her Be Like was finding that mission. So for, what I did in her Be Like was, we give you an exercise to help you think about what's the legacy that you want to leave. What are, Michael Hyatt wrote a book with Daniel Harkavy called Living Forward. And in it, they have you, go try to come up with your eulogy, right? So because it's like, what do you want people to say about you when you die, right? For example. So I think Krista is doing this work that is so important. She's empowering women to understand that they are important, that that they are not their body, what their body looks like, or what they're what they're feeling that day. And so it's such an important message. And every decision you and I talked about, we keep talking about this, is every decision is based off of that. How, if I do this, will it help women see in themselves what I see in them, right? So all of her decisions are based on that. And that's why I think it's important. That's why I picked her, because, she's not out there trying to be famous. She's trying to help women in any way they can, first and foremost in her family, second in her circle and in her gym, and she's just doing such great work, and it's so inspiring what they're doing, what she's doing there.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the strength coaches that are listening to this are wondering what, a woman that's working at a gym with, X number of members can do for them. But I put that in perspective, for me, and it's like, man, there's 500 women that are so bought into her and her mission that they're paying probably a premium price to be at this boutique gym or however you want to describe it. And she's created this raving fan base of people that are motivated beyond just lifting weights. And that mission to me applies to strength and conditioning coaches in so many ways. That's what we want. We want that tribal following. We want that kind of mindset that, hey man, they're coming here not because they have to, but because they want to. Yeah. And again, you can take one thing away from that, it makes you a better strength coach in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and think about that ripple effect too, right? I mean, those women are going home to their kids, not just the little girls, but to the boys. And there's a different language at Tough Girl Fitness, for example, too. They're not saying, hey, Ron, you look good in those jeans. Like, they don't say that, right? They just say, oh, man, you're awesome, And they're teaching the kids to speak differently, the boys too. And eventually it's a different generation of kids that are speaking a different language and looking at things differently. And so there's such a, and those women are going home feeling better about themselves. And the ripple effect is they're better wives, they're better family members, they're better mothers, right? And they're making better husbands. And so it's amazing what that ripple effect does.
It's 100%. I just got a tweet yesterday from a coach that had used weight room wisdom in their weight room with their athletes, like I intended for it to be used.
Yep.
It was a clip from one of their athletes being interviewed by the local news station after a loss, and they were talking about the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean. And the story that was in the weight room wisdom that he would share and talk about in the weight room. And it was, you just think about that. Not only did it affect the coach, but then it turns around, it affects the team. The team affects it in a environment where things aren't going well. That's what they draw upon, and so I'm not trying to make that about weight room wisdom, but that ripple effect. When you do stuff like this and you read things like this and you implement things like this on a daily basis, God, I don't even know who that coach is. So, that's the kind of stuff. And I love books like this. And it goes back to what you said, your be likes. If you do that like a daily devotional and every single day, you're working to be like the best and practice those exercises and those skill sets, you can't not get better. You can't not, you can't not improve. And, so I'm fired up for you. I think it's a great deal.
Thank
we
you.
end the show with some resources here. Give us the best piece of coaching advice or business advice that you ever received.
Oh man. Yeah. I got to go back to relationships, was really, be somebody that person wants to say, I want to go have a beer with that person afterwards, right? Always think of that. Like, it's not about, hey, we're going to help you lose 20 pounds or you're going to become the fastest player, on the field. It's also about making that connection, engaging. And I really, it's funny, I've used this word intentional so many times that that's the intent when I go into a new conversation is I don't want this person, I'm not going to try to make them think I'm so smart. I want them to understand I care. One of my favorite quotes, nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. And I think if you think about those things in that conversation, you're going to be really, your business, your training, your whatever it is, you're going to be successful.
100%. Give us a book, app, and website recommendation.
Yeah, the book, I'm going to have to go with Building a Story Brand. Donald Miller, I think going back to helping people, this industry, you got to build your own brand, everybody. And, you have to prepare for the next step. Building a story brand is about what it is that you're doing and understanding your mission and understanding, that message to people, getting a clear message out there to people. You got to get that book and listen to it, read it. Donald Miller is an amazing resource. The website, Smart Passive Income, Pat Flynn, he can teach you how to do a podcast. He can teach you how to do affiliate marketing. He can teach you how to do email marketing. These are all skills we need in this industry to help us get to the next level because we need multiple streams of revenue. We do. And again, preparing for that future. Pat Flynn has so much integrity, and he's done an amazing job with this. He has a great podcast. He has a great website. Anything you get from him, he's going to over-deliver. The apps, I got to go with Calendly. I know you use a different one, Ron, but the scheduling app, I've used this Calendly as a scheduling app just for even somebody's like, hey, can I get, 15 minutes with you on the phone? I'm like, okay, here's my schedule. So, I don't get any, scheduling conflicts. Like, I'm like, oh, man, they scheduled 10 o'clock interview too. I got that interview at Ron, and I forgot about that interview. Calendly puts it in, puts it in with your calendar. And, there's so many great things too. You can ask all the questions you need in an app like that as well. Like, what's your, send me your links. What are all your social media? You can get, instead of 20 emails, that app has saved my life. And it's not just for online stuff. You could do meetings, lunches, whatever it may be, conversations, tours, whatever it has to be. It's a awesome. Great app. I couldn't live without it.
But before I know you wanted to use Audible as well, right?
Yeah.
But I think I want to single that out because I think that's a prime example of where coaches can improve, right? Is in their time management. So all that back and forth on emails, all that, being able to drop in. Here's the 5 times that I'm available. Pick one.
Yes.
It's so much quicker and gives you so much more time back to your day, which ultimately gives you more time to your family, which is why that's important. So taking the time to research, and this is something that you and I geek out about all the time when we talk, but like all these different tools and stuff, because it makes your life more efficient, and if you're more efficient, then you're better, get more with your family. But man, you've been such an impact on me. Again, one of the critical people early in my career when podcasting to help me get that up and going. Mike Boyle was one that, even suggested I go podcasting. You were my next call, and it's so helpful there that this is 7 years. And so it's, again, I feel terrible that it took 7 years to get you on the show, but then more importantly, your friendship and the way that you go about and the educating of people. I know how much work that takes, I know all the stuff that goes into it, and all the different things that you've done through the years and all the creative ways that you've gone about incorporating different things for not just coaches, but personal trainers and people in general. Man, that's a special person, and you're a special guy, and appreciate you being on the show, and excited about Be Like the Best book. When's it come out, and where can people get it?
Yeah, it comes out October 18th. We will be doing some pre-launch bonuses. We're going to do a workbook that can be bought separately, but we're going to give everybody like a PDF. Like, there's a workbook we're doing just with the Be Like, so you can write in it. right? That's going to be a separate purchase. Not trying to sell that, just for somebody that wants to. But anybody that pre-orders, we're going to give them the PDF of that so they can, print out that specific Be Like and do that. So we're going to be doing that. So if you go to Be Like the Best, that's also at continuefit.com. It's where we're going to be. You can sign up to get notifications of that. But belikethebest.com or belikethebestbook.com is where we're going to be, both of those places. That might lead to my publisher's site, belikethebestbook.com. But just go to belikethebest.com and it'll direct you to there. Sign up for the email on the email list. We're going to give you notifications about that, about the pre-launch bonuses, which are always, great to have. Some extra goodies. We're going to give you some of the interviews, the full interviews that we did. When you sign up there, you'll get Ron's interview, one of the original 5 interviews that I did for this project before it was
I don't want to tell them that. They're just probably not going to buy it then.
There you go.
No, hey, man. Again, I mean, not only is it, it shows you Anthony's heart. I mean, he's a giver and then some, and being able to provide all those additional resources and ways to consume it. Because again, coaches, I mean, you consume in different ways. And so,
yeah.
But I'll go back to one of the things that he mentioned, taking action. Take the action, go buy this book, do the Be Likes, work through the workbook and become a better coach. And that's ultimately what this is about. And, if it sits on the bookshelf and you don't do anything with it, it doesn't mean anything. And I know that Anthony doesn't want you to buy it if it's going to do that. But if you want to get better as a coach, go pick this up and take action and get going on it right away.
Ron, thank you so much for having me on, brother. I appreciate it. It's an honor, all that you've done for this industry as well. And it's nonstop with you. It's ridiculous how much you've done for this industry and for strength coaches, and the travel that you do, the podcasting, the teaching, the educating. So thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com, where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.